Hey team, so maybe you have a friend or a family member who is an astrologer or an astrology enthusiast, and you're trying to figure out how to understand what they do and how to talk to them or, how to engage with them in their interest. Or maybe you yourself are an up-and-coming astrology enthusiast who has similar questions about where to go, how to get started, what to do, what to look into, and sort of what your first steps are as you may be getting a little bit more advanced. So my first piece of advice would be if you do have a friend or family member who is an astrology enthusiast and you're interested, well, express that interest to them. They're probably more than happy to talk with you about the thing that they love, astrology. And, you may get lucky and they may decide to make an entire video series about basics of astrology to help you understand what it is that they do to share that with you. One of the first and biggest steps you can take on your journey to understand astrology is to learn how to read an astrology chart. It is, of course, the most basic thing that we do. Astrologers look at these charts all day, every day, and they contain information that we use to, interpret symbols or to convey information to other people and to understand what is going on at any specific moment in time. So today I'm going to kind of walk you through how to read different kinds of astrology charts because different types or different ways that the information is presented may be better for you depending on where you are in your course of learning. So first, to clarify, when I say read an astrology chart, what I mean is to be able to look at a chart and understand the information it's trying to convey. To be able to look at a chart and be able to tell somebody else, where a particular planet is in their chart. We're not really talking about interpreting a chart because that comes later. Once you get an understanding of how to read a chart, then you can start to untangle the symbolism and understand what that chart is trying to tell you about an individual or an event or anything like that. So this is definitely sort of like step one, and then eventually, step two comes along where we're able to kind of more have fun with it, as we'll say. So there are actually several different methods to convey or depict astrological charts. Today, our most popular method is through what's called the circle chart. And the circle chart is, of course, shaped like a circle, as the name implies. And this sort of mirrors the kind of conceptual shape of the sky as it kind of envelops a particular point on the Earth. This is, of course, not the only way. The circle chart is itself kind of a more recent phenomenon in the history of astrology. Before the circle chart, we had square charts, which are more common in the medieval and the Renaissance period because drawing a circle by hand is very hard, but drawing a square by hand is not very hard. And then, even more anciently than that, you have like tables or lists of placements where an astrologer just says, this planet is in this sign in this house, and there you go. And depending on where your level is, what your level of comfort or familiarity with, some of the symbols or with astrology in general, it might be better for you to start with a particular type of display or scheme of information. Ultimately, you should aim to be able to read a circular chart, but they are definitely the most complicated. So if you're just getting started, then probably reading a table is the better option for you, as it will have a lot of information just kind of written in it that you kind of have to already have some information to know to pull out from a circle chart. So today what we're going to do is we're going to walk through both a table chart and a circle chart to show how they convey information, the same information, but a little bit differently. And so you can see, maybe if you're not super familiar with circle charts, how a lot of that same information is just depicted slightly differently. So if you've never seen your birth chart before, or you've never seen a circular version of your birth chart before, what you're going to want to do is go to astro.com, and here we are at the homepage here. And astro.com is the most popular and the most accurate chart calculation service that we have online right now. So I definitely always recommend going here to double check stuff. So there's a lot of stuff going on this homepage, but what we're going to focus on is we're going to go to free horoscopes, and this stuff is going to drop down. We're going to go over here to the right to natal chart ascendant. And then we're going to get taken to this page where it's going to ask us if we want to continue as a guest user or sign up for a profile. Either one is fine. The difference is that the profile users get, I think, about 100 saved charts, so good for kind of like a free storage if you're going to want to move forward with that, whereas the guest user, I think, just gets 2, so we're just going to keep going forward with the guest users here. Your privacy is protected. That's really nice. And now you're just going to put in your birth information. So we're just going to do a chart for right now, where I am, or like what's going on right now. Today's the 14th of January. It's year 2021. We're just going to do for noon. Why not? And we're going to do for Austin, Texas. And you can type in your the city, and it'll kind of drop down with the longitude and latitude. So make sure to select that. So if you don't have your birth information, most people are going to, most people know their birth date, which is good. And that's the, the day, month, and year that you're born. More people tend to not know their birth time or sometimes even their birthplace. In cases like this, I recommend asking a relative who might remember, or going and finding your birth certificate, which may have this information listed. If you find your birth certificate and the time is not on it, I've had a lot of success encouraging people to submit to get a new birth certificate from their state or province or country's Department of Health. In that, even a lot of times those longer form documents will contain the birth time, even if like a birth certificate that was issued shortly after birth does not have it. So go and check that out. If you find a birth certificate that doesn't have a birth time, go apply to get the long form sent to you, because it may have it. So we're going to go ahead and move forward and click continue. So this is actually something interesting to talk about. The birth data entry asks for a gender for you to select male, female, or event/other. And the purpose of this is because the website, astro.com, sells auto-generated reports. And so by selecting the gender, you tell it basically what pronoun to use in those reports. It's not something that affects the astrology. It's just the website wanting to know how to refer to people, what pronouns to use to refer to people in their auto-generated report. So just be aware of that. We're just going to do event other. And we're going to continue. So then it's going to pull up the circular birth chart for the information that you put in. And you can click on it and kind of get it in its own window, but I actually really dislike the way that this looks. So I am going to encourage you to do something a little bit more advanced. We're going to close that. We're going to go up here to free horoscopes, and we're going to go to extended chart selection. And then you can just select that one there just now, and then just go click here to show chart. And it gives you in my opinion, like a much bigger and a much better view of that chart. You can click it again to get some more stuff. So this is the circular chart that we're going to be working with, and you can see it's just a bunch of symbols and more symbols and some little numbers and some lines and some more little numbers, and that's just all kind of disorienting and confusing, and that's absolutely true, especially if this is something that you have very little experience with. This is overwhelming. So what we're going to do is we're going to compare this to a different way to show the data, which is through a table. So in order to get the table version, you want to go to cafeastrology.com. And I kind of had to get there through kind of a convoluted way, so I'm not sure if there's an easier way or not. But we're going to scroll down here to free reports and calculations. And then we're going to keep scrolling until we find our free astrology reports. And then it'll take you to a page that looks like this. And it'll be welcome to Cafe Astrology's free report section. You're going to click on create a new chart. And then you're going to put in information. This will let you select pronouns. And then you can put in just like a nickname. We're going to do now, since that's what we're talking about, January 14th, 2021. And we're going to keep our 12 noon. And then you're going to go in here and type in the birthplace, which is Austin, Texas. But it only works, I had trouble getting it to work if we put in the state name, but it might be an issue with like the abbreviation. Let's try that out actually. No, see, it just like kind of blanks out. So we have to kind of scroll and find, the state, and then it'll put in the information here, and you hit submit, and then it'll kind of show you this page. But as you scroll down, you'll get the table. This is the table format that we are looking for. So if you're newer to astrology, then the table format is probably going to be a little bit more helpful to you. But let's see. So now I've kind of put the two of them side by side. Here's the chart, and here is the table. And each one shows the same information, but they show it differently. So when we're talking about our table, which might be more helpful for individuals who are just kind of getting started or unfamiliar, the table is very helpful because it lists, the glyphs, what it is, the glyphs, what it is, and the degree position and things like that. So this can be really helpful if you aren't super familiar with what the glyphs are yet, to help teach you what they are. Whereas, if you come over here and look at the circular chart, you don't really have an explanation really of them on the chart itself. Like if you don't already know that this is the moon, you don't know that. If you don't already know that this is Aquarius, you don't really have an indication of what that is here. But on the table, it helps you it walks you through that a little bit easier. So like I said, both of these charts show the same information, they just do it in their own way. So let's go ahead and kind of break down the different pieces of the circular chart and how it compares with the table chart as provided by Cafe Astrology. So when we're talking about our circular chart, I think the best way to start is from an outside-in approach because it's kind of easier to talk about as we move. So the first thing that you kind of notice when you look at the circular chart is these symbols here on this outside circular rim. And what these are showing us are the signs of the zodiac. So the signs of the zodiac are of course, are 12 standard signs, and they are places in space, essentially, that the planets kind of move throughout. And so these little tick marks that we're seeing on the outside and inside of these little slices represent specific degrees. So the zodiac as a whole is a circle, and you may remember from geometry class that a circle contains 360 degrees. The same is true of the zodiac. It contains 360 degrees. And each of the zodiac signs are 30 degrees. So each sign contains, 30 of these tick marks with kind of bigger ones to denote 5 degrees apart. So we've got like our, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is a big one, and kind of that. So we have the signs of the zodiac kind of displayed around the circle here, and they are kind of our framework to tell us where certain planets or points are. So if we go in slightly from here, we have this kind of more inner ring that's light blue on the chart. And this is the circle where we'll see our planets positioned. And basically the idea is, like, we'll see a planet, like this sign here is for Mars. And we can look and see what slice Mars's little line is in. Each planet's kind of exact position is marked by this darker blue line, because sometimes when you get like a lot of planets smushed together, like up in here, they may not be, their positions may not accurately really show where they are. And so they use a little line to indicate where they are more accurately than they can with the symbol, which takes up, so much graphical space. So basically the idea is when we're looking at this chart here, we'll see, okay, this symbol, which is Mars, his little line is here, so this is the zodiac sign of Taurus. So we could say, okay, so we know that Mars is in the sign of Taurus. That's kind of the basic gist of it. And then we can do the same thing, with the other planets. And unfortunately, when it comes to like the symbols and the glyphs, that's something that you're kind of going to have to memorize. But using a table can actually be very helpful, because it will teach it to you as you go through, because as you can see, the names are right next to the glyphs. So, I said before that in this circular chart, we can see that Mars is in Taurus because we can see Mars's symbol, Mars's little line, and it's firmly within the boundaries of the Taurus section here. But if we look on the table chart, we can see the same thing is verified for us. We have Mars, that symbol, in Taurus. And that's kind of the basic idea of how they show similar things. And then we can do the same thing. We said the moon was in the sign of Aquarius, and then the table chart shows us the same thing. The moon in Aquarius, just kind of like I said, same information displayed a little bit differently. This is a little bit more user-friendly and may help you to learn the circular chart a bit more easy, kind of using them together. So looking a little bit deeper into this first light blue circle, we can also see these numbers next to our planetary symbols. We'll have like a bigger number and then a smaller number kind of superscripted above it, almost like it's an exponent. And what these refer to are those specific degrees and minutes of the zodiac signs that the planets occupy. So taking a look at Mars again here, we see that we have Mars in 3 degrees and 42 minutes of Taurus. And so we can go over here and look at our table chart. We can see that exact same information. Mars in Taurus, 3 degrees, and this one says 43 minutes, so slight difference on the minute here, but basically the same information displayed there. A slight discrepancy between the two on the minutes, that's fine. So I mentioned before that the zodiac as a whole is a circle, so it's 360 degrees. Each of the signs of the zodiac contain 30 individual degrees that make them up. So what we would say, what's happening here is we're saying that Mars is in 3 degrees of Taurus. Like this is the exact specific degree of Taurus that Mars is in, and in the 43rd minute of that degree. So these degrees are also kind of further subdivided into minutes, of which there are 60. So there's 360 degrees in a circle, 12 signs of the zodiac, which each have 30 degrees, and each of those individual degrees also have 60 minutes, which make them up. So we're just kind of getting into smaller units of measurement to more accurately show where a planet is. The minutes and stuff aren't super important until you get a little bit more advanced, but they're just kind of good to kind of keep an eye on to know what they are and what they're talking about. And then we kind of go in one more step and we see this much larger circle with these lines in it. Actually, this is kind of like my one complaint about Astro.com. It's sort of the emphasis they put on this. Like, these lines look very dramatic and very dynamic. A lot of red, some blue, so your eyes kind of immediately brought here, and this is not a super important thing to worry about right now. All these lines are showing are mathematical relationships between planets. In astrology, we call them aspects, but it's really easy to think that they're kind of like a super or most important thing to look at first. They're not, and I wish there was a way to kind of de-emphasize them in the Astro.com charts, but kind of just don't pay attention to them right now. We'll have, of course, separate videos talking about aspects and how to see them and what they're doing and things. So finally, kind of moving more towards the center, we see this circle of numbers surrounding the center of the chart: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. And they are sort of in the middle of these pie slices indicated by these lines. Some lines are bolder, some lines are thinner, but what these lines and these numbers are depicting are the houses of the astrology chart. So astrology charts are kind of subdivided into two distinct 12 groupings. We have our signs of the zodiac, which is one grouping of 12, where we'll see primarily planets placed in here. It kind of gives us divisions of where planets are in specific signs of the zodiac. And then you have another division of 12, which are the 12 houses. And so if the zodiac signs sort of divide up outer space and are used as a measurement system for astrologers and astronomers to see where planets are, then the houses divide up kind of the sky or the space around you or a point on Earth. So the houses kind of tell us where planets are in relation to a specific location, whereas the signs of the zodiac tell us where planets are sort of in the world as a whole. So different houses will take up different amounts of space depending on how the houses are calculated, and there are many different ways to calculate houses. So don't be too surprised if you're looking in some places or some online sites and you're looking at your birth chart there and they show slightly different house positions. They're probably utilizing a different system of house division. Don't worry about that so much at the beginning. It's easier just to kind of go along with the defaults. Right now, kind of more popularly, it's Placidus, but there are many different kinds. But like I said, don't worry about that right now. Just kind of make sure that you're aware that any kind of changes to planets in houses or to house cusps, these lines are referred to as house cusps. They mark kind of the boundary between one house and the next. It's probably just a difference in house division, probably not a bug. So to get information on this, we're going to have to go down a little bit on our table and look here. So up here on our kind of our top table, we had the positions of planets in signs of the zodiac and those degrees. The sun in Capricorn, 24 degrees. Down here, we don't have a planet column because we're not worried about the planets anymore. They have their own they have their own table. What we're focused more now on are the houses. So there are 12 houses, of course, numbered 1 through 12. We keep it pretty simple. And the house cusps will fall on specific degrees of the zodiac to kind of mark the beginning of each house. So here we can see that the first house, what is called the ascendant in astrology, is in the sign Aries and is in 23 degrees and 57 minutes. And we can see that here on the circular chart, this bold horizontal line here. This is the ascendant, the first house cusp, and this is the descendant, the seventh house cusp. And so the house cusps come in pairs, 1 and 7, 2 and 8, 3 and 9, 4 and 10, 5 and 11, and 6 and 12, in which they are exactly opposite one another. It's one line that kind of spreads out across the whole length of the circle, kind of cutting it in half, essentially. So they're exactly opposite each other, but they hold onto these kind of different slices to do different things. So we'll say that our first house begins from 23 degrees Aries, and our second house begins on 26 degrees Taurus, which is this slice right here. So any planets that are between these 2 degrees, between 23 Aries and 26 Taurus would be described as being in the first house. And this is really where you start to get a lot of the kind of labeling in astrology charts, where we start to see how things are, or where things are, and kind of where these planets are exerting their influences. They're exerting their influences in both the sign that they're in and the house that they're in. And we'll talk about more what that means, in later videos. But right now, it's really just kind of more important to get used to talking about planets in houses and in signs correctly, being able to look at a chart and be able to tell, whether that's a table chart or a circular chart, being able to tell where a planet is in the sign or house. And this is something that is a little bit more difficult to tell within a table than it is in a circular chart, because in a circle you kind of have these little slices clearly divided, and it's easy to say, oh, okay, Mars is in Taurus, the 3rd degree, in the first house, because you can clearly see that it falls within these different subdivisions of the circle. But in a table chart, that's really much more difficult to look at. You'd have to kind of go and look and say, okay, Mars is in Taurus 3 degrees, and then come down here and find where that degree falls between. And of course, it falls between these two, but that takes a little bit more know-how to be able to do. So in that instance, it can be a little bit more difficult for the people who are relying on tables to be able to kind of more accurately know what houses their planets are placed in. Thankfully, if you scroll down just a little bit more, you do have another table that lists more specifically what house those planets are in. So that 3rd table is like the Sun in the 10th house, and it uses Roman numerals, the Moon in the 11th house, Mercury in the 10th house, Venus in the 9th, Mars in the 1st. So in this kind of way, you can go and look and say, okay, so my Sun is in Capricorn in 24 degrees, and the Sun is in the 10th house. So that makes it a little bit easier in that regard, whereas you just kind of have to look at multiple places, whereas the circular chart kind of puts it all there for you right in one picture. The circular chart also has its own kind of little help or cheat sheet. If you scroll a little bit down, you'll have these yellow sections here at the bottom third that kind of talk a little bit more specifically list out the positions of things. So this will tell you a little bit more in that it shows you, the glyph of the planet, which can help what the planet's name is. So the Sun is this circle within a circle. And then it'll tell you the degree, the sign, the minute, and then this other number is the second. So not only are zodiac signs divided into 30 degrees, and each of those 30 degrees into 60 minutes, they're also further subdivided into 60 seconds. So it goes even smaller, but don't worry about that. Don't worry about the seconds. Not super important. And so it'll list out, kind of give you the 3-letter abbreviation of each of the zodiac signs to help you figure out a little bit easier where planets are. Mars in 3 degrees Taurus, Mars in the Taurus section in 3 degrees, and that falls within this first house pie slice. One thing that I don't think that Astro.com chart does very well is the house cusps. Because it'll tell you what they are down here. It says the ascendant is at 23 degrees Aries in 54 minutes, which is accurate. But it doesn't. It only shows you those for 6 of the house cusps. It only shows you that for the first house cusp, the 2nd, the 3rd, the 10th, the 11th, and the 12th. And the reason for that is because, like I said, they stretch across the entire circle and cut it in half. So you can know the degree positions of, say, the 8th house cusp over here by knowing what the 2nd house cusp position is, saying that it's 26 degrees of Taurus. Then, we can go across the other side of the zodiac and say, oh, it must be at 26 degrees Scorpio. But that requires you to kind of know a little bit more about, what signs of the zodiac are said to be opposite one another on the circle, which is, a level of information that you may not be aware of if you're just kind of getting started. So I don't super like that. And I think that being able to list them all out here, like this table does, is a much clearer way to show that. So one tool that I think is actually very helpful, but kind of buried within Astro.com's site, is called the AstroClick Portrait. And you can access it by going up to Free Horoscopes and clicking on AstroClick Portrait. And it'll take you right here to this page and show you this chart here. Now, I actually had a little bit of a problem accessing it because initially, when I made this kind of chart for this moment in time, I selected it as an event chart. But because this is something that they consider kind of one of their auto-generated report features, they require you to choose a gender. So you have to go back and choose either male or female. But once you do that, you'll be able to access the chart here, and you can click on it. You can click on different areas of the chart to get information about it. So like, let's say you wanted to know, we pointed out, we've kind of picked on this Mars and Taurus. If we click on that here, it'll give us information about it here on the side. And it'll say, okay, Mars is in the first house. And it'll give you a little bit of a snippet of a meaning of how that Mars in the first house might manifest. You're very energetic and self-assertive, and you never retreat from a conflict because it's kind of Mars energy here. But it also provides you with more things to click on up here, kind of talking more about Mars specifically. So we're kind of zooming in on this Mars and the different things it's experiencing in this particular horoscope. So you have Mars in the first house, you can select Mars and Taurus, and it pulls you down some more information about Mars and Taurus. And you can even dig more into aspects, which is something that I didn't really talk about other than to say don't worry about them right now. But you can even click on that and get information about how Mars is interacting with other planets in this particular horoscope. So definitely a really great way to look at it, and it kind of takes a very, what's kind of more pejoratively called cookbook approach. It takes, one thing and really zooms in on it. But when you're just getting started, this might be very helpful to be able to kind of see what astrologers look at, how they might interpret certain things, and how different things might work in those different aspectual relationships and things like that. So I definitely recommend going and checking this out if for anybody at kind of any level, because it is kind of an interesting thing to kind of spend some time with. So as you're kind of moving forward from here, either practicing on reading circular charts or anything like that, I have a methodology that I can recommend to you, what I remember doing when I was first starting, to kind of help build some good habits for being able to look at, read these charts, understand what they are trying to tell us. So what I recommend doing is starting with the ascendant. This is the most important point in the entire astrological chart, and is something that you will refer back to very, very often, almost all the time, especially as you move more forward into more advanced astrology. If that's something that you are interested in or decide that you're interested in, start here, be able to look at the sign that this line runs through and what degree it is placed in, and then just start kind of formulating those sentences. The ascendant is in the sign of Aries at 23 degrees. And then from this point, you can either decide, which way around the circle you want to go, either go up through this way or down around this way, clockwise or counterclockwise. Personally, I would recommend going up and clockwise. That'll be something that is important later, especially as you start to learn more about the houses, but there's no problem with going down and counterclockwise. If you kind of want to move through the houses a little bit more numerically, that's totally fine, whichever way. But just kind of get started in your method of going through these two directions, going up or down, and then saying, once you encounter something, being able to say, what is this symbol? What sign of the zodiac is it in? What degree is it in? And then what house slice is it in? So in this example, it would be Chiron in Aries, 5 degrees in the 12th house. And then you can kind of come down here and double check that if you need to. Just see Chiron's that kind of key symbol, 5 degrees Aries, and 20 minutes. And you may want to kind of double check this with the table chart if you're having a little bit of difficult time with the house positions, because there is that table that lists planetary points in the houses. And then you just kind of keep going up and you encounter another planetary symbol. Ask yourself, who is that? What sign is it in? What degree is it in? What house section, slice of pie here is it in? And just kind of keep that going all the way around until you come back to the ascendant. It's a really great way to kind of quiz yourself on who is who and where they are, while just kind of like following a circle. And then once you get back to the beginning, you've done it and you've listed where everybody is accurately and correctly. One key point to make is that when you're describing these positions and saying, where they are, it's always planet in sign in house, or planet in house in sign. So for instance, it's Mars in Taurus in the first house is the correct way to say it, or Mars in the first house in Taurus. Either way is fine. What's not technically correct to say is Taurus in Mars or the first house in Mars. That's not how it works. It's the planet that is in a section of the sky, either in the zodiac or in the houses. So just kind of an astrological syntax lesson there. It's always planet in the sign or in the house, never house or sign in the planet. So there you have it. That's basically all you really need to be able to understand what you're looking at when you're looking at either a table chart or a circle chart. Like I said, ultimately the goal is to be able to look at and understand a circular chart, but there's no shame in being at the table stage of your learning. We all had to start somewhere. So if you have any questions about how to read charts or about certain astrological basics, be sure to drop them in the comment section below, where of course I can answer them. And what is most likely to happen is that your question will remind me of a thing that I need to talk about and make a video on. So please go ahead and ask and share any of your questions or concerns, and I will see you guys next time.